A 50-shilling bet. I mean, that is literally where this all starts. Just a 50-shilling bet placed from the quiet, presumed safety of a family living room. And it ended up costing a mother her life.
Yeah, it's just incredibly tragic, and it really shows how the modern Trojan horse, well, it doesn't wait outside your city gates anymore. It buzzes right inside your pocket.
Right. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a profoundly heartbreaking, like really intimately detailed narrative account of a woman named Harriet.
And our mission today is to deconstruct Harriet's journey. We really need to understand how she transitioned from being this quiet, isolated, stay-at-home mother to, well, a victim of a vicious, gamified digital gambling trap.
Exactly. We're going to examine the exact mechanisms of how a seemingly harmless smartphone ad just escalated into this fatal cycle of debt, shame, and unimaginable internal suffering.
If you want to visualize what happened to Harriet's life, I mean, picture a cozy, quiet living room,
Right.
kind of physical sanctuary where you raise your kids, fold the laundry, that sort of thing.
Yeah, safe space.
Exactly. But slowly, over the course of our discussion today, I want you to imagine that warm room being completely overshadowed by a stark, flashing, gamified digital grid.
Wow.
The technology simply overtakes the physical sanctuary.
That visual metaphor is chilling, but it really perfectly sets the stakes. And, I want to ask you, the listener, a question. Have you ever found yourself mindlessly scrolling through your phone just to, fill the quiet, lonely moments of your day?
Oh, I mean, we all do it.
Right. Maybe you're waiting in a parking lot or sitting on the couch after everyone else in the house has gone to sleep. Harriet's story starts exactly there. It reveals how quickly our everyday devices can become these sophisticated traps.
Because we often treat mindless scrolling as a neutral activity, right? A benign way to pass the time. But the platforms we are scrolling through are intentionally designed to be anything but neutral.
Yeah, they're always watching.
They're constantly reading our behavioral states, just waiting for a moment of idle vulnerability.
So to understand how a simple airplane graphic on a screen could systematically dismantle a life, we have to look at Harriet's daily reality. The sources describe her as a woman of few words.
Right, very private.
Yeah. She was known to be innocent, fiercely focused on her home's welfare, and incredibly firm against detractors. People in her community used to guess a lot about her and frame her for things, but she just kept her head down.
She possessed a very strong core identity. This wasn't someone easily swayed by peer pressure or local gossip. Her validation came from providing for her family.
But then she went through a monumental life transition. She had a business that she fought tooth and nail to keep afloat during the COVID pandemic.
And that takes a huge toll.
It really does. After struggling for a year post-COVID, she was physically and emotionally exhausted and finally had to close the doors. Almost overnight, she transitioned into a stay-at-home mother, entirely reliant on her husband's income.
The psychological weight of that shift, I mean, it cannot be overstated. Going from being an independent business owner to being entirely financially dependent is a massive shock to a person's sense of self-worth.
It strips away a massive pillar of her identity.
Exactly. And her daily routine suddenly reflected that emptiness.
Right. She would get the kids ready, take them to school, come back to an empty house, do the chores, and then just
She just waited for them to come back.
Yeah. The sources note that life was not easy on her. Slowly, her deep post-business closure depression morphed into a quiet, heavily internalized loneliness.
And the sheer invisibility of her struggle is a critical factor here. The text explicitly points out that nobody saw her pain because she maintained the facade of the strong woman.
She always showed up for her family.
Right. As the years passed, the community assumed she had simply adjusted to her new role. She had passed that initial visible phase of deep depression, so everyone just assumed she was fine.
And on paper, things actually looked stable. The money her husband provided for household expenses was sufficient. She was managing it so meticulously that she was even skimming a little off the top to save up.
Because her ultimate goal was to open another business in the future. She still had that drive.
She still had hope. But in those quiet, isolated hours, alone in the house with nothing but time, she would log into her smartphone. She'd flip through social media, leave a comment here, post a picture there.
Just filling the silence.
Exactly. And during one of those scrolling sessions, an advertisement caught her curiosity.
This is the precise moment the digital trap is laid. It capitalizes on that specific cocktail of boredom, isolation, and latent ambition.
And I really want to highlight that this wasn't a sports betting ad. The source makes it clear she wasn't a fan of sports, so traditional gambling advertisements didn't resonate with her at all.
No, the algorithm served her something very different.
It was a simple game featuring a flying plane paired with a very specific hook. It promised that if you put in just a little money, you are, quote, guaranteed winning. It looked incredibly easy.
The customization of that ad is insidious. It bypassed her natural defenses against gambling by presenting itself as just like a casual mobile game.
Right.
But more importantly, we have to look at how this targeted her underlying desire for financial independence. She was painstakingly saving grocery money to restart her business and maybe buy a car.
So the ad manipulated her quiet desperation.
Exactly. It didn't ask her to risk her life savings. It used the psychological lever of a microtransaction, promising an easy return on a tiny investment.
It's as if she had built this impressive fortress, right? Carefully stacking her saved pennies to secure her family's future. She thought she was safe inside, but the enemy was already inside her pocket.
Disguised as a harmless, colorful airplane graphic.
Yeah, she thought she was just entertaining herself in her living room, but she had unwittingly invited a predator into her sanctuary.
And this predator, it doesn't operate with fangs and claws. It operates with behavioral psychology and gamified user interfaces.
Let's break down exactly how this interface works, because the progression here is terrifying. She finds someone on social media explaining how the game operates, and right then and there, she makes her first bet.
Just 50 shillings.
A tiny, almost meaningless amount. The plane takes off on the screen. The source says she was lucky. She cashes out at 2,000 shillings.
Which is an astronomical percentage return on her initial stake. Her brain instantly registers a massive dopamine hit associated with financial success.
But this is where the narrative introduces a crucial psychological twist. She wins, right? She turns 50 into 2,000. But the plane in the game doesn't stop.
No, it keeps going.
It keeps flying upward on the screen, eventually hitting a 1,000 times multiplier. The source explicitly notes, quote, she did her mathematics and felt stupid and wished she was more patient.
That reaction is so key.
Why in the world would she feel stupid when she just won? Shouldn't she feel like she beat the house?
That is the genius and the cruelty of the design. The interface is engineered to induce a very specific phenomenon known as the near-miss effect, or in this case, a manufactured missed opportunity.
Okay, how does that work?
By showing her that the plane continued to rise to a 1,000 times multiplier after she secured her win, the visual cue is screaming at her subconscious. It tells her she didn't win 2,000 shillings.
Oh, I see.
It tells her she lost out on a whopping 50,000 shillings because she lacked nerve.
Oh, wow. So the interface emotionally punishes her for playing it safe and cashing out early. It actively turns a victory into a source of regret.
It completely rewires the emotional takeaway. Instead of walking away feeling empowered, she walks away feeling like she made a mathematical error. The game convinces her that her caution is a flaw.
And the natural human response to making a perceived error is the desire to correct it.
Exactly. It immediately hooks her, planting the seed that she must return the next day to prove she can be patient enough to hit the big multiplier.
That is incredibly manipulative, and it worked flawlessly on her. The source describes how, that very same day, she started making grand plans.
Yeah, she's calculating how she'll open a new business next week.
How she'll buy her own car. That evening, she was so elated she told her kids she had found something new online that would generate money. She promised she'd be buying them good things again.
Because the game didn't just give her money. For a brief, shining moment, it handed her back her lost identity. It restored her status as a provider, which is exactly what she had been mourning.
So we get to day 2. The hook is set. She logs back in, places a significantly larger bet using her earnings from the previous day, and she wins again.
A huge win this time.
Yeah, she cashes out 40,000 shillings. And remarkably, she manages to withdraw the cash, log completely out of the app, and wait for the following day.
From a behavioral design standpoint, what she just experienced is a textbook variable ratio reinforcement schedule.
Okay, let's break that down for the listener. What exactly is a reinforcement schedule, and why does waiting a day matter here?
Think of how a slot machine conditions the human brain. If a machine pays out exactly every 5th pull, the brain figures out the pattern and gets bored.
Right, there's no surprise.
But if the rewards are variable, meaning you never know exactly when the big win is coming, but you know it is possible, the brain's dopamine system goes into absolute overdrive.
So by waiting.
By logging out and waiting a full 24 hours with that 40,000 shillings in her pocket, She isn't cooling off. Her brain is spending that entire day marinating in the anticipation of the next variable reward. The delay actually solidifies the psychological conditioning.
That makes perfect sense, but it leads to a darker question. She successfully beat the system twice. She is sitting on 40,000 shillings. She feels incredibly empowered.
Yeah.
How does that profound feeling of empowerment actually serve as the catalyst for her total downfall?
Because that manufactured empowerment replaces her natural protective hopelessness with a deeply false confidence.
Oh.
When Harriet was depressed and lonely, she was highly cautious.
Meticulously saving her grocery money.
Exactly. But the app manufactured a string of early luck that entirely masked the predatory reality of the algorithm. It convinced her she wasn't gambling at all. She believed she was successfully executing a new, highly lucrative business strategy.
It disarmed her critical thinking completely.
Completely.
Which brings us to the downward spiral, and the speed at which it happens is just devastating. She's at home, waiting for her husband. The sources mention he habitually comes home drunk, which adds another layer of anxiety.
Right.
While waiting to self-soothe or perhaps chase the next high, she starts gambling. And in that single session, she gambles away every single coin she had won. All 40,000 shillings gone.
The false confidence shatters instantly.
Yeah.
And the raw addiction mechanism takes over. She shifts from playing to win to desperately chasing her losses.
She drains whatever savings she had managed to scrape together. But the trap doesn't end when her bank account hits zero. This brings us to a crucial element of this modern digital trap, the role of easy credit.
Yes, the mobile lending apps.
Once her own money is gone, she immediately starts securing loans from these apps.
We really need to dive into the mechanics of frictionless credit here, because this is where the digital age fundamentally changes the nature of addiction. Historically, if someone lost their savings at a casino, hitting zero forced a physical pause.
Right. You have to physically leave the building, maybe drive to a bank or go find a loan shark. You have to look another human being in the eye, explain why you need the cash, and face the real possibility of rejection.
Exactly. Behavioral economists call that friction. That physical friction creates a vital psychological cooling-off period. It forces an interruption in the brain's frantic dopamine loop, giving the rational prefrontal cortex a few minutes to step in and say, stop, this is a bad idea.
But mobile lending apps remove that circuit breaker entirely.
They offer credit straight to the device she's already holding in her hand. It is instant, it requires zero human interaction, and it is entirely private.
So for someone in the grips of chasing a gambling loss, frictionless credit is like pouring aviation fuel on a fire.
She can fund her addiction, plunging into debt, without ever having to break eye contact with the flashing screen.
The source notes she really tried to keep her head above water initially. She started being overly social, visiting neighbors to borrow money, and for a short while she managed to pay them back.
But the math of the game is unforgiving.
As time went by, she couldn't keep up. The cash her husband left on the table for daily food would vanish in a minute. She started visiting different local shops to borrow basic food items on credit and simply never paid them.
We are watching a deeply hidden digital problem physically manifest into a real-world community crisis.
And this brings up one of the most tragic ironies of Harriet's story. She wasn't living in a vacuum. She was surrounded by family. She lived in close proximity to neighbors and shopkeepers.
But no one recognized her hidden struggle until it was far too late.
The text outlines several clear warning signs. Let's talk through what a family or a community actually could have spotted to identify early financial distress.
The signs were definitely there, but they require looking past the surface. The first was sudden, completely unexplained moodiness. Harriet went from being a stable, quiet presence to being highly erratic.
Which people probably just brushed off as stress rather than recognizing it as the emotional whiplash of winning and losing hidden money.
Right. And then there's the vanishing grocery money. The text says it would disappear in a minute.
That is a massive red flag.
If someone who has a proven track record of being highly frugal suddenly cannot make the household funds last a single afternoon, something catastrophic is siphoning that money. It's not just inflation.
The text also mentions a really subtle detail. Unnoticeable small household items suddenly started going missing.
She was quietly liquidating household assets for instant cash to feed the app.
And finally, that abrupt shift in her social behavior. Remember our initial profile of Harriet. A woman of few words, kept to herself, didn't engage in local gossip.
Suddenly, she is hypersocial, visiting multiple neighbors strictly to secure personal loans.
That kind of severe, abrupt personality change isn't just odd, It is a blaring distress signal. But because people don't associate a quiet stay-at-home mother with severe gambling addiction, they misread the signals completely.
Instead of recognizing a woman drowning in a psychological trap, the community just saw her as a nuisance.
And the reality she was enduring behind closed doors was absolutely terrifying. She was facing constant calls, aggressive text messages, and severe threats from these unregulated mobile moneylenders.
It spilled out into the open when shopkeepers started demanding the money Harriet owed them directly from her husband.
And her husband, who the text established was frequently drunk and abusive, reacted with rage. He beat her, verbally abused her, and explicitly threatened to kill her over the debts.
The crushing emotional weight of her constant social isolation and shame at this point is just staggering.
I want to slow down here and really look at the mental decline she experienced, because the text describes her internal agony with such raw detail. Her mind was fracturing.
She began fasting entirely.
She was crying out to God, agonizing over what she could have possibly done to deserve being punished this severely. She couldn't understand how she fell into a trap that had no exit.
She is trapped in a perpetual state of psychological torment, bouncing violently between the desperate manufactured hope that the apple let her win it back and the absolute empty hopelessness of her physical reality.
She began experiencing severe suicidal ideation. She even reached a point where she contemplated killing her own 4 children to spare them from the fallout of her debts.
Or intentionally provoking her violent husband into killing her so she wouldn't have to do it herself.
The contrast here is just devastating. The public, her neighbors, the shopkeepers, her husband, they perceive her merely as an irresponsible, deceitful woman who owes them cash.
But privately, she is enduring agonizing internal suffering.
She feels completely hollowed out, full of nothing but regrets, and utterly exhausted by the act of living.
This profound disconnect highlights why the community failed her so fundamentally. When we look at addiction, especially when it involves financial ruin and mothers, society applies an incredibly harsh double standard.
Because they just saw the missing cash, not the psychological illness driving it.
Exactly. They diagnosed it as a moral failing. Instead of offering genuine support, empathy, or intervention for a woman clearly in the grips of a highly engineered psychological addiction, the community reacted with hostility.
And public shaming. The digital lenders threatened her life, the neighbors gossiped and chased her for petty cash, and her husband utilized physical violence.
Every single external force in her life reacted in a way that drove her further into isolation. They forced her deeper into silence.
And ironically pushed her back to the gambling app as the only possible, albeit statistically impossible, way to buy her way out of the nightmare.
It's a complete systemic failure of empathy.
So where does this all end?
It ends in the only way a trap like this is designed to end, when all the exits are blocked.
The source solemnly wraps up the narrative. Harriet, completely exhausted from the haunting, relentless pursuit of debt collectors, the abuse at home, and the unyielding grip of the addiction itself, threw herself into a river. Her body was recovered later.
It's a devastating outcome. And perhaps the most chilling, defining line from the entire source material is this. Quote, "People knew what she was doing with the money, and nobody wanted to forgive her.
Even in death, they offered no grace."
Even in death, society chose to judge her character and fixate on her financial debts rather than recognizing the profound systemic tragedy of her addiction.
They didn't see the trap.
The community never understood the mechanics of what she fell into. They didn't see the gamified design of the airplane, the psychological manipulation of the near miss, or the predatory nature of frictionless mobile credit.
They just saw a mother who squandered her family's money and deemed her unworthy of forgiveness.
It's the ultimate heartbreaking injustice. She was helpless, she was hopeless, and she died surrounded by people who refused to understand her.
Her story forces us to confront a massive blind spot in how we view modern digital addictions. Because the trap is initiated quietly, on a glowing screen, in the privacy of a living room, we do not treat it with the same urgency as a visible, physical affliction.
The structural damage to the person's brain and life remains invisible to the outside world until it results in total catastrophe.
Which brings me directly back to you, the listener. The sleek screens we hold in our hands every single day, the ones we rely on for connection and convenience, are powerful enough to quietly dismantle a human life entirely behind closed doors.
We carry these modern Trojan horses with us everywhere we go.
The algorithms know exactly when we are bored. They know when we are lonely or stressed or feeling inadequate. And they are explicitly engineered to exploit our quietest moments of vulnerability for profit.
We have to fundamentally change our perspective on this issue. We need to start viewing the sudden, unexplained mood swings, the rapidly vanishing household budgets, and the abrupt social behaviors not as moral failings, but as glaring symptoms of a potential digital crisis.
We need to replace judgment with profound curiosity. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today as you go about your routine.
Yeah.
If our digital world is meticulously engineered to silently exploit our quietest moments of isolation, how can we start looking past the surface of our loved ones' behaviors?
How do we ensure that their stoic silence isn't actually a desperate, hidden cry for help?
Because, as Harriet's story so tragically illustrates, the physical walls of our homes cannot protect us from the predators we willingly invite right into our pockets.
We can no longer rely on walls to keep each other safe. We have to become the safety net for one another.
Until next time, keep looking deeper.
Listen, like, and subscribe to Robbers of Life channel for more true life stories.